The sky above Milos was a deep violet, streaked with dying amber from the twin suns setting behind the Iron Mountains. Commander Mateo Vargas stood on the landing platform, his boots sinking slightly into the dust-swept metal. 50 years old, weathered by war and time, his eyes carried the weariness of countless campaigns. This was supposed to be his last assignment, just a ceremonial post before retirement. A quiet farewell to the life of war. But peace, as he would soon learn, was never silent. They brought her in chains. The guard stood uneasily as the dropship door opened with a hiss. A figure stepped out, tall and cloaked in red. Her skin was a pale lavender, her eyes like molten obsidian. The woman was adorned with tribal markings, her arms wrapped in armor made from the bones of predators. She moved like a panther, even restrained. Qatar warrior, Guerra, Sangriana clan, murmured Lieutenant Keller beside him. Apparently a gift of peace. Mateo felt a surge of unease. This was no gift, this was a test. He walked forward, eyes locked with hers. "What's your name?" he asked, voice steady. The woman stared back, unblinking. "Azra." "No longer," Mateo said, turning to the guards. "From now on, she'll be called Sasra. Here, names have meaning beyond blood." Sasra raised an eyebrow. "Do you think renaming me makes me less dangerous, human?" Mateo offered a faint smile. "No, but it gives us both a chance to be more than what we were." Inside the outpost, tensions rose quickly. The crew watched her every move, unsure if she was a prisoner, an ally, or a ticking bomb. But Mateo made it clear, no cages, no cruelty. She was to be treated as a diplomatic guest, despite the silent fury burning behind her eyes. At first, she refused food, refused rest, refused everything. Until one night, she stepped onto the training deck. "I want to see if your people can fight," she said coldly, tossing a training blade at Mateo's feet. He didn't hesitate. The duel was swift, brutal. She was stronger. He was smarter. Their movements were a blur under the floodlights, steel against steel, breath against breath. And when it ended, neither had won. Both were winded, bloodied, and for the first time, smiling. "You're not bad. For a war-weary relic," she said between pants. "And you're not as monstrous as the stories," he replied. From that day forward, they trained together. The blades became extensions of their conversations. Their silences were filled with unspoken understanding. Yet, the rest of the outpost remained uneasy. Rumors spread, whispers about the commander growing close to the enemy. One morning, Sasra stood at the edge of the observation deck, watching the horizon. "Why do you let them talk?" she asked. "Because they've never had to look an enemy in the eye and see a person," Mateo replied. She turned to him, something soft flickering beneath her guarded expression. "You confuse me, human." He stepped closer. "I confuse myself." That night, alarm screamed. Drones spotted movement beyond a ridge. Figures bearing the markings of the Guerra Sangrienta. Her people, coming out with gifts, but with fire. Sasra tensed. "They've come to reclaim me, or to kill us both." Mateo didn't flinch. "Then we defend this place. Together." She looked at him, really looked, and for a heartbeat, there was no war, no history. Just two warriors at the edge of silence, choosing not to run. And with the night falling like a cloak, the storm began. The first explosion shattered the calm like a war drum from the gods. Mateo dove instinctively as the eastern wall lit up in a roar of flame. Sirens wailed. Soldiers scrambled. The air was filled with smoke and confusion. And at the center of it all stood Sasra, motionless, her eyes glowing like twin embers as the shadows of her former clan advanced. "They're not here for diplomacy," Keller gasped, gripping his rifle. "They're here to erase the treaty, and you brought one of them inside our gates." Before Mateo could respond, Sasra stepped forward, her voice slicing through the panic like a blade. "They're not my people anymore." Her words hit like thunder. For a heartbeat, the crew froze, uncertain whether to aim their weapons at the attackers outside or the warrior now inside their walls. But Sasra didn't wait for orders. She grabbed a pole staff and sprinted toward the breach. Matteo followed her, shouting orders as he ran. Hold the western flank. Evacuate the med bay. Keep the comms open for backup. The enemy poured in like a swarm, masked warriors, moving with lethal grace. They weren't here to negotiate. This was an execution. Sasra moved like a phantom. Her strikes were surgical, swift, full of rage and precision. She disarmed 3 assailants in seconds, then turned to Matteo, blood on her knuckles, eyes wild. They're testing your defenses. This is only the first wave. How do you know? He barked. Because I trained them. That admission stopped him cold. She looked away, shame flickering for the first time. I was meant to lead them, but I chose something else. Matteo stared at her, heart pounding, not just from battle, but from the weight of what she'd just revealed. Why? Why betray your own clan? Her gaze locked with his. Because I saw something worth protecting, and someone who saw me as more than a weapon. The words struck deeper than any bullet. But there was no time to answer. A second explosion tore through the northern wall. Screams echoed. Smoke filled the sky. Sasra grabbed his shoulder. We need to fall back to the command core. If they take it, the entire outpost falls. They sprinted through chaos, flashes of plasma, screams, the scent of ozone and ash. Inside the command core, Keller and a few surviving soldiers had barricaded the doors. Matteo burst in, bloodied but focused. Status. Bad. Keller spat. Comms are jammed. No backup. We've lost 30% of the perimeter. And he pointed at Sasra, is the reason they knew exactly where to strike. I said I'm not with them. Sasra barked, stepping forward. Keller raised his rifle, but Matteo slammed it down. She saved lives out there. If you can't see that, get the hell out of my sight. Keller stared at his commander, once a legend, now defending the enemy. Then, slowly, he lowered his weapon. Outside, the fighting grew louder. Inside, the silence was heavy, until Sasra finally spoke, voice low. They won't stop. Not until this place is ashes. Then we hold the line, Matteo said. Together. She looked at him, her expression unreadable. Even if it means dying next to me? He didn't flinch, especially then. And in that moment, something changed. Not just in her, but in the air itself. It wasn't just battle anymore. It was transformation. 2 former enemies, forging something raw and new in the heart of war. Matteo turned to the crew. Prep the fallback drones. We reroute power to the turrets and close off sectors B and C. They think we're broken. Let's prove them wrong. And as the warriors of Guerra Sangrienta prepared to storm the gates again, Matteo and Sasra stood shoulder to shoulder, 2 hearts forged in fire, ready to burn for something greater than vengeance. The war wasn't over, but neither were they. The outpost pulsed with tension, lights flickering, sirens still echoing faintly, like ghosts refusing to leave. Smoke hung in the air like a reminder that the battle was not just outside. It was inside each of them. Inside Matteo. Inside Sasra. Matteo stood over the tactical map, his brow furrowed. They're regrouping, he said. Same Guerra Sangrienta pattern. Hit, retreat, observe. They're waiting for our weakness. Then don't show them one, Sasra said, stepping beside him. Her armor was scorched, her lip bloodied, but her eyes blazed with clarity. Matteo looked at her, still trying to understand the shift. Days ago, she was a symbol of distrust. Now, she was essential, dangerous, unpredictably loyal. We lost 12 men, Keller said coldly from the corner, and our energy grid's hanging by threads. How do we even trust she's not guiding them from inside? Sasra's eyes flicked to him. If I wanted you dead, you'd be ashes already. Enough, Matteo snapped. She's earned her place. Question her again, and I'll question your loyalty. Keller bit back his rage and stormed out. The silence that followed was thick. I shouldn't be here, Sasra said quietly. You should, Mateo replied. They fear you out there. That means you're the one thing standing between us and annihilation. She hesitated. They won't stop, Mateo. They'll keep coming. And the deeper they push, the more I'll be forced to make a choice between the blood I was born into and the blood I've spilled to stay here. Mateo turned to her. Then let me make this choice simple for you. He stepped closer, inches from her now. You're not them anymore. She stared into his eyes, trying to read whether he meant it, or whether this was another tactic, another attempt to control her fate. But no, it was raw, real. She turned away. There's one thing they fear more than peace, Commander. What? Betrayal. From one of their own. Before he could ask more, a proximity alert screamed through the command center. A new signal, no, too. One massive dropship landing half a click out, and another signature rising from beneath the outpost. They're tunneling, Mateo realized. They're hitting us from above and below. They're smarter than before, Sasra said, narrowing her eyes. This isn't just conquest. This is surgical. They want you and me alive. Mateo's voice dropped. Extraction? No. Interrogation. They think I know too much. She suddenly slammed her fist into the wall console, sending sparks flying. We have to cut power to the lower levels and seal the core, now. But our wounded, Keller returned just in time to hear her. You're suggesting we sacrifice the medbay to stop them? I'm suggesting we choose who lives and who becomes bait. Everyone looked at Mateo. The weight of command was back. Heavy, brutal, inescapable. Do it, he said. Seal it. I won't lose this outpost. Keller stared at him like he was a stranger. The order was executed. Floors rumbled, doors sealed, and below, in the dark, screams echoed, cut off by steel. Mateo couldn't breathe for a second. He had just condemned lives to save more. The weight sat heavy in his chest. Sasra didn't speak. She just watched him, studied him. You made the hard call, she said softly. No, I made the necessary one. They stood in the dim corridor, the war closer than ever. Every shadow felt like a threat. And then a sound. A low, rhythmic hum. Not mechanical, not natural. Sasra tensed. That's a summoning chant. And what? They brought a priest. Her face paled. They're not just here to kill us, Mateo. They want to unbind me. Remove every trace of human memory. Reset me. Mateo's blood ran cold. They want to erase you. She nodded slowly. If they succeed, I become their weapon again. A long silence. Then Mateo whispered, over my dead body. Without thinking, he reached out and took her hand, rough, calloused, scarred like his own. She didn't pull away. We fight, he said, not just for the outpost, for who you are now, for what we've built. Sasra's jaw tightened. Then we bring hell to them first. As alarms flared again and the walls began to tremble, Mateo and Sasra ran, not just in a battle, but into destiny. The enemy had come to reclaim their weapon. But what they'd find was something far more dangerous. A weapon with a soul. The outpost burned red under the glow of the twin moons. Smoke spiraled into the stars, and screams carried through the broken halls like echoes of dying gods. The Garrisangriena were no longer hiding, they were invading. Mateo stormed through the command corridor, helmet in one hand, plasma pistol in the other. Where the hell is that breach team? Eastern bulkhead collapsed, shouted Keller through comms. They've flooded the tunnel, sliced through our minds like paper. Sasra appeared beside Mateo, her armor painted with blood, some of it hers, most not. Her eyes locked with his. They've brought the Hollowborn. Mateo stiffened. The what? She didn't blink. Assassins, raised without names, without voices. Their skin is carved with oaths. Each scar, a life taken. They don't fight for honor. They fight for erasure. Before he could process, the lights flickered, and everything went silent. No sirens, no boots, just nothing. Then a whisper, a hiss of movement. Close, too close. Move. Sasra, shoved him down as three hollowborn materialized from shadow. They didn't speak, didn't breathe, just attacked like shadows made solid. Mateo fired wildly, but they moved through the shots like smoke bending around flame. One slashed for Sasra's neck. She twisted, caught its wrist, and drove a blade straight into its chest. No scream, just stillness. Then it crumbled, dust and ash. They're bound by soul threads, she panted. Kill them wrong, they return stronger. You must sever the oath mark. Mateo scanned the second hollowborn, saw a glowing symbol burned into its chest. Got it. He dove under its swing, rolled, and drove his plasma blade through the sigil. The thing froze, then shattered like glass. The third was gone. Mateo stood, chest heaving. That was an assassination squad, not recon. They were here for you. Sasra nodded. To drag me back, or bury me where you'd never find me. They're getting desperate. She glanced toward the breach wall. No, they're getting furious, and that's worse. Suddenly, the sky screamed. They both turned to the viewport. A massive vessel descended from the clouds, blotting out moonlight. Its hull pulsed with crimson glyphs. It wasn't a warship. It was a judgment vessel. Sasra paled. The High Matron has come. Mateo's blood turned cold. As in your leader? As in my mother. She didn't have to explain more. This isn't a raid anymore, she said, voice shaking. This is a blood rite. She's come to burn the failure and retrieve what's hers. Mateo clenched his jaw. You're not hers anymore. She doesn't believe in choice, only obedience. He grabbed her shoulder, forcing her to look at him. Then we show her what happens when obedience dies. Sirens wailed again as the vessel began launching heat bombs, fiery meteors slamming into the outpost's outer rim. Explosions rocked the base. Systems blinked out. Oxygen filters failed. Panic erupted. And in the middle of it all, Mateo and Sasra ran. Where are we going? She shouted over the chaos. To the archives. Mateo barked. There's something the old commanders hid under the AI vaults. Classified. You think a file is going to stop her? I think what's down there was buried for a reason. They descended into the belly of the base, floor by floor collapsing behind them. Flames licked at the walls. Steel twisted and groaned. And then they reached it. A sealed chamber, covered in frost, labeled Project Catalyst. Sasra stared at it. What is it? Mateo typed in an old command code, one he swore never to use. The door hissed open. Inside, a weapon. No, not just a weapon. A living construct. Half machine, half DNA, Qatar and human combined, floating in a cryopod. Sasra stepped back. You try to make one of us. Mateo looked at her. We didn't. They did before the truce. Before you were ever born. This was the real plan. Merge the best of both worlds. But it failed. No, he said. It was too perfect. They buried it because they feared what it might become. Sasra turned to him, fire in her eyes. Then let's unleash it. Mateo nodded. But as he reached for the override switch, an explosion ripped the ceiling apart. Standing in the rubble, the High Matron, cloaked in living shadow, her voice a chorus of 1,000 tongues. Step away from my daughter. Mateo stood firm. She's not yours. The matron's eyes glowed. Then die with her. Sasra stepped forward, blood-streaked, eyes burning. I already chose my side. The matron raised her staff, the air warping around her. And behind Mateo, the pod cracked open. A figure rising, reborn. Eyes of light, heart of fire, born of two worlds, ready to burn the third. The chamber pulsed with ancient energy as the cryopod hissed open, releasing a cloud of freezing mist. The hybrid stepped forward, barefoot, skin etched with glowing patterns that pulsed in sync with the dying outpost's alarms. Its eyes were both human and alien, shifting between hues of deep amber and electric blue. It looked at Mateo, then at Sasra, and then at the matron, and it smiled, not with innocence, but with recognition. I remember you, it said, its voice layered, male and female, young and old. You tried to erase me. The matron didn't flinch. You were a mistake. A crime against nature. The hybrid tilted its head. Funny. I was about to say the same about you. Mateo whispered to Sasra. How powerful is it? Sasra's throat tightened. We don't know. The project was shut down before it fully activated. They feared it could manipulate quantum bonds, tear through matter by thought alone. The matron raised her hands, and her armor unraveled into writhing blades. You should have stayed buried. The hybrid took a single step forward. The floor beneath it cracked. With a blink, it vanished and reappeared behind the matron midair, slamming her into the far wall with a shockwave that knocked Mateo and Sasra to the ground. Dust exploded. Steel shrieked. Fire danced along the floor. The matron rose slowly, blood on her lips. So be it. I will end all of you. She unleashed a torrent of black energy, ribbons of shadow infused with ancient war chants. The hybrid caught it midair, twisting the energy back toward her. But this wasn't just power. It was personal. The chamber shuddered as they collided, mother and the other. Meanwhile, Mateo pulled Sasra behind cover. That thing's fighting for us for now. Sasra looked at the hybrid. It's not just fighting. It's learning. Every second. Should we run? She looked at him, fear and awe mixing in her eyes. There's nowhere to run if it decides we're next. Suddenly, the hybrid turned. I was created to unite. But the first thing they taught me was betrayal. It turned to Mateo. Your kind wanted a weapon. Hers wanted a warning. I wanted neither. Mateo stood slowly. Then what do you want? Choice, it said. In a world that doesn't fear what doesn't fit their mold. The matron screamed, lunging again, her form burning with dark flame. But this time, Sasra stepped in front of the hybrid. Enough. The matron hesitated. I'm not your daughter anymore, Sasra said. You killed that part of me the day you gave me away as a bargaining chip. You want a weapon? I became one. But not for you. The matron snarled. You think they won't turn on you too? Mateo stepped forward. We don't need to. She chose her side. Then the hybrid raised its hand, and the entire outpost froze. Fire paused midair. Flames stopped moving. Even a matron gasped. I've seen the timeline, it whispered. I was built with fragments of a future you all tried to avoid. But the only way forward is through unity, through pain, and through choice. It looked at Sasra. You carry both fire and loyalty. And you, Mateo, compassion and guilt. It stepped between them. I need both of you. Sasra looked confused. For what? The hybrid looked up at the fractured ceiling. Beyond it, the stars blinking like a million watching eyes. The others are coming. Not Gera. Not humans. Something older. Drawn by the same energy that awoke me. Mateo's voice was dry. Aliens. The hybrid smiled. No. Judges. The original architects. The ones who scatter the galaxies. They seeded all of us, and now they've come to see who survived the test. Sasra stepped closer, lowering her blade. And what do they want? The hybrid's eyes dimmed. To decide if this experiment, this universe, is worth keeping. Mateo's heart thudded. And us. The hybrid turned to them, calm. With a last chance to prove it is. Alarms blared again, but this time from space. Signals intercepted. Massive structures forming at the edge of the system. The real enemy had arrived. Sasra tightened her grip. So what now? The hybrid extended its hands, one to her, one to Mateo. Now we stop fighting like enemies and become what we were meant to be. Mateo hesitated, but then reached out. So did Sasra. The chamber lit with golden light as their hands touched. 3 minds, 3 paths, 1 chance to save everything. And outside, the sky cracked open, revealing something vast, watching,